What begins as a quiet, emotional visit to his late father's grave slowly transforms into a moment that reshapes everything he thought he understood about his past. The single father comes seeking nothing more than a few minutes of silence, an escape from the constant weight of responsibility, grief, and unanswered questions left behind after his father's death. Standing before the weathered gravestone, memories flood back. Lessons half spoken, sacrifices never explained, and a bond that ended before it could fully be understood. Just as he prepares to leave, a woman steps into view. Her presence feels deliberate, almost unsettling. She doesn't introduce herself right away. Instead, she speaks his father's name with familiarity, too much familiarity. She mentions places, moments, and promises that were never written down, details no outsider could possibly know. Each word tightens his chest, forcing him to confront a chilling realization. This is not a coincidence. The woman reveals that his father carried a secret life, one shaped by loyalty, regret, and a decision that changed more than one destiny. She explains why his father was often distant, why certain opportunities were refused, and why sacrifices were made in silence. The truth hits harder than grief itself, because it reframes everything he believed about the man who raised him. In that moment, the grave no longer represents an ending, but a doorway to understanding. The encounter leaves him shaken, conflicted, yet strangely at peace. What he thought was a final goodbye becomes the beginning of a journey, one that forces him to redefine his father's legacy, confront his own fears, and decide what kind of future he will now build for himself and his child. The woman takes a steady breath before speaking, as if she has carried this truth for far too long. What she reveals is a long-buried secret tied directly to his father's past, one carefully hidden beneath years of silence and quiet sacrifice. She explains that his father once stood at the center of a life-altering choice, one that demanded loyalty over comfort and responsibility over personal happiness. The decision reshaped everything that followed, yet it was never spoken aloud. As she talks, fragments of the past begin to align. The missed celebrations, the sudden moves, the unexplained financial struggles, and the emotional distance his father maintained were not signs of indifference, but shields, meant to protect his family from consequences they never knew existed. The sacrifices were deliberate, and the silence was not absence, but endurance. The woman reveals her own connection to that past, explaining why she stayed away and why she chose this moment, at the grave, to finally speak. Her words uncover truths that were never written into family stories, truths that rewrote the meaning of his father's actions. What once felt like neglect now appears as quiet courage. For the single dad, the revelation is overwhelming. It forces him to confront the painful reality that his father carried burdens alone, believing that love sometimes meant being misunderstood. The family history he thought he knew suddenly feels incomplete, rewritten by hidden loyalty and selfless decisions. Standing there, he realizes that understanding the past doesn't erase the pain, but it gives it meaning, and with that meaning comes a chance to heal, forgive, and finally see his father not as a distant memory, but as a man who gave everything in silence. Her confession lands heavier than anything he has heard before. It doesn't simply alter a few memories. It completely reshapes how he understands the man who raised him, and in turn, how he understands himself. Every moment he once labeled as emotional distance or unspoken disappointment now carries a different meaning. His father was not absent by choice. He was carrying a weight meant to protect his family, even if it meant being misunderstood until the very end. As the truth settles in, the single dad begins to question the story he has been telling himself for years. He realizes how much of his own identity was built on incomplete answers, on pain he never fully understood. The revelation forces him to confront his fears of repeating the past, of failing his own child the way he once believed his father failed him. Now those fears begin to loosen their grip. The confession reshapes his purpose as a father. He understands that strength doesn't always look loud or heroic. Sometimes it looks like quiet endurance and unseen sacrifice. This realization changes how he chooses to show up for his child, not just as a provider, but as someone willing to be emotionally present, honest, and open, even when it's uncomfortable. The direction of his life subtly but powerfully shifts. What once felt like survival now feels like intention. He carries forward his father's legacy with clarity instead of resentment, choosing to break cycles of silence while honoring the sacrifices that came before him. The truth may have arrived late, but it arrives with purpose, transforming grief into understanding, confusion into resolve, and a broken past into a future he can finally step into with confidence and peace.